Welcome to the Modernize or Die podcast, CFML News Edition, where we keep you up to date with everything going on in the ColdFusion community. We'll share the latest news on events, releases to engines, frameworks, libraries, and tools, as well as spotlighting quality content from the community. Welcome back to Modernize or Die podcast, CFML News Edition. It's October 20th, 2020. We're up to episode 75, Brad.
75! That's a lot. That
is.
means there's been a veritable 74 other episodes.
Yep, and even some of them might even be good.
Let's not break the train.
Yep. Well, we can try anyway. So, Brad Wood, software consultant for Ortus Solutions, is joining me. I'm Gavin Pickin, a software consultant for Ortus Solutions as well. And speaking of Ortus Solutions, we want to thank them as being our sponsor. So without them, we wouldn't be able to produce this podcast. Right now we have 2 virtual workshops coming up. So we have a ColdBox Hero to Superhero training this week, and then we have the Quick workshop coming up in November. So those are 2 ways that you can thank Ortus by attending some trainings. And we also have CFCasts.com, which is a great subscription platform that we've built that allows you to see free and paid content from Ortus Solutions and soon some community members as well. But that's
Nice.
another way you can sort of give back to Ortus Solutions and for all the work that they do, especially with this podcast.
So I just realized that my Starbucks green tea matcha latte actually has the background through it. It's like a little green screen in front of my face.
You've got green screen tea. That's pretty
you
cool.
people that just listen after the fact, you miss all this live theatrics.
Yeah, we get some pretty fun stuff with the video. And we get people heckling us in the chat, which is fun most of the time.
Quiet, peanut gallery.
Yeah.
So what's the news and events today?
Yep, well, one thing I noticed is that Zach Spitzer announced that Lucee 5.3.7 stable has been released.
Woohoo! That's about 6 months coming.
Yep.
I think literally it's been a redonkulously long time since 5.3.6 came out. Now it's a good thing because 5.3.6 was a really nice, good, stable release.
Yeah, it has been pretty good.
So it really sucks when there's some major problems in a release and then it takes forever for the next one to come out. So luckily, 5.3.6 was a good release. But that was May 18th. Is when that came out. How long ago was May 18th? I love how you can just Google questions like this. 155 days ago. I don't know what days are. What are days? What are days anyway? So that's 22 weeks, 5.5 months. Yeah, it's been a long time coming, and they had 2 release candidates for the 5.3.7.
But you're waiting for 5.3.8 because of all your.
Well, yeah, I know, and I'm already like, when's 5.3.8 going to come out? Yeah, so all my query enhancements are in Lucee 5.3.8. We have at least a couple, 3 people I know of already using my query enhancements in 5.3.6 because I had that patch on my blog. You can apply to a 5.3.6 server and it'll add those enhancements. If anybody really, really wants it, I could probably merge all those changes into a 5.3.7 branch and run a build of that if anybody wanted to use it. But hopefully 5.3.8 won't take as long as 5.3.7 did.
Yep. So the release notes should be available soon on the dev.lucee.org, but it's just good to see it out the door. So. Speaking of things that have been way too long in development, don't you have CommandBox
I
release?
see what you did there. I see what you did there.
Well, you were knocking Lucee, so I thought I'd give you a jab back. So tell us about CommandBox 5.2.0 release candidate 1.
So it's the first release since June 1st. So I didn't wait quite as long as Lucee to get my release out, but it was about as long. Well, technically, this is just the release candidate. So, so CommandBox 5.2 has also been a long time coming. My excuse is I was waiting for Undertow to merge all my pull requests. But yeah, so this is, it's a minor release from 5.1.1. But we've got some major stuff in there. I know I say that like every minor release, but I feel like we do so much fun stuff. The big things. Well, actually, you have it on the screen. You reminded me. I counted through all the pull requests, and I think I had like 7 different pull requests from the community in this a part of this release. So I'll just say those people are Pete Freitag, Kai Koenig, Matthew Clemente, Bobby Hartsfield, Scott Steinbeck, Daniel Mejia, and Miguel Matthews. So big props to all the people sending me pull requests that are all part of this release. I joked in my tweet that I didn't even have to like do any work. You know, everybody was just writing these releases for me. But I think probably the two, like, oh geez, there's so many good features. Probably the three biggest features that I really like in this release are I have server profiles added, which is like one switch lockdowns, like production mode, development mode. So you can take a CommandBox server, and by default, it's like, boom, production mode, ColdFusion administrators blocked, all the config files are blocked, you know, stuff is locked down. And then you can say, okay, put it in development mode, and now directory listings enabled, the ColdFusion administrator is externally available. So kind of those, you know, one-click lockdowns, sort of like secure profile that ColdFusion did. But this is kind of a start. I'm going to build on top of it. The second big feature really goes hand in hand with the first one, and that's the server rules. And this taps into a really sweet feature of JBoss Undertow called the predicate language, where you can kind of write these rewrite rules, but it's a really nice readable syntax to say, you know, if the path starts with this, rewrite it to this, or send back this response code, or do a load balancing proxy to these backends. There's all sorts of crazy stuff you can do with the rewrite rules. And so that's all baked into the server.json, makes it really easy to lock down and configure your applications. You can even do rewrites with them. And then my third favorite big feature that's completely unrelated to those first two are the task runner lifecycle events. So just like ColdBox lets you do pre-handler, post-handler, around handler, pre-event, post-event, around event, all those kind of convention methods, you can do that in CommandBox task runners now in 5.2. So you can have pre-task, post-task, around task, and then pre-target, post-target, and around target. And there's a whole bunch of additional ones like on error, on success, on failure, on cancel, on complete. Just any of those methods, you put them in your task.cfc, and they get called automatically by convention whenever that kind of, you know, life cycle of the task being run happens. And that was, you know, the necessity being the mother of invention there, because I was doing a lot of task runner work, and I was thinking, man, I really wish I had some easy ways to do stuff that runs at the beginning and the end and all this stuff. So yeah, that's only like half of what's in CommandBox 5.2. So since there were so many big changes and just new features, library updates, I decided to do a release candidate and stick it out there, let people beat on it, make sure there's nothing like, oh my gosh, how did you miss this?
How did you break everything? Yeah.
Yeah, you know, it's I mean, we did that with 5.1, right? We like thought everything was stable, merged in some last minute code, pushed it out the door, and we're like, oh look, we broke Mac servers. You can't run a server on a Mac because we suck, right? You know, super simple little thing, but this last minute thing we merged that we hadn't fully tested, which is why we had CommandBox 5.1.1. So I'd rather not do that. So if there's a bug in 5.2 and you don't find it in the release candidate, it's your fault. I'm just going to say it. You should have tested it beforehand. I don't have a window on the release candidate. Just hopefully either I don't get any feedback or what, I don't know. But if eventually when you get to a point where it feels like the 5.2 release candidate stable, people aren't reported anything, or maybe just nobody's testing because you guys all suck, then I'll just go ahead and make it stable. But now's your chance to push on it, especially with the server rules stuff. We implemented a lot of new flags and nonsense in the server.json, and there's also some interesting logic that tries to kind of like guess whether or not it's in development. So if you have an environment variable called environment that's equal to the word development, which is a common ColdBox convention, then CommandBox will see that and say, hey, I think I'm supposed to be in development mode right now. Or if your server's bound on localhost, CommandBox will say, I feel like I should be in development mode right now. But like those are open for tweaking at this point. If you guys test it out and you're like, well, hold on, this doesn't work because, this reason. So give me feedback. That is the answer. John, you're the second person to ask that. John Farrar asked in the chat, is there a release candidate image for Docker? The answer is no. If you begged and pleaded with John Clausen, I suppose he could probably create one. We don't typically make Docker image for CommandBox pre-releases, just because we don't usually take the time to do it. It's probably like a single line in your Docker file, however, just to download the latest box. If you want to to play with it locally in Docker. So it's all backwards compatible. So if you want to play with CommandBox 5.2 in Docker, I would just add a run command in your Docker image that pulls down the latest box before you do anything. That's my suggestion. However, on that note, I had been talking to John Clausen because several of the features I've added into 5.2, such as, flip a flag, now it's in production, or flip a flag, now the administrator's blocked, I specifically did with Docker in mind, because John already has some features that sort of do the same thing, but using like the Tucky rewrite engine or some other environment variables. And so I'm already talking with John about how the next version of the Docker images can maybe capitalize a bit better on some of these new CommandBox features. But I was going to wait until we had this out, and then we could see how to plug it in.
Yeah, well, there's definitely a lot in it. I mean, it's pretty big for, just a minor release. So good to see lots of great stuff going on in there. So
Yep. And so that does have the new version of Undertow, like I mentioned, that has 3 pull requests from Team Ortus, thanks to Miguel Matthews as well, because he helped out with those. So we have Ortus Solutions code in the core of JBoss Undertow, which is pretty exciting, and that's gone full circle now into CommandBox.
So if you've broken it all, then it's your fault.
No, it's the people who didn't test the release candidate. It's their fault, Gavin.
Okay. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah. Fill out the wall, see if it sticks.
Yep. Okay, well, next up, we have a little update on CF Summit 2020. So if you want to find out more about what's going to be at CF Summit and how it's pulled together, CFAlive podcast actually had an interview with Kishore. So Michaela Light and Kishore talked about, basically, and I quote, "This situation is not right for having physical events this year, so we're going to make it online. We're excited that it's going to be the biggest conferences for CF, basically." So it's he's excited. So find out a bit more on that podcast. We have the link, which I'll share in the show notes here. And yeah, it's kind of interesting. I'm curious what they're going to do. I know they're going to try and make it interactive and everything. So hopefully they'll give you a few more insights in that podcast. So check that one out. Okay, I heard someone in the chat talking about not being able to take this workshop that we're doing, because the last ColdBox 6 Hero to Superhero workshop is coming up here. So it's actually this week. So if you want to sign up, you better hurry, because it's Thursday and Friday this week. So just want to let you know there's a couple of spots left. We're keeping them nice and small. So if you want to do that, ortusolutions.com/events. Last chance to sign up and use podcast 10 to save 10%. So don't forget about the workshop. Okay, so next up, we also have another Ortus Webinar coming up as well. So we just announced that. And this one's going to get some interest, I think. John Clausen's going to be leading it. Do you know why this might be interesting?
I feel. Yeah.
Yeah, so John is doing From Mura to ContentBox, staying on the open source upgrade track. So a lot of people are talking about Mura lately, and obviously their licensing changes. And so we're looking at helping a lot more people get over to ContentBox from Mura. So John's been working on a lot of migrations, and so he's the perfect person to talk to you about switching from Mura to ContentBox. So he'll talk about what's the same, what's different, how to go about it, and he'll actually convert a site over during that webinar. So that's coming up.
Convert a website during the webinar?
That's what he says.
Nice. So it must be easy.
Yeah.
I know that we have a Mura importer. I've never used it because I've never had a Mura site, but I'm assuming he'll be using that. That's pretty exciting.
Yep. So that's going to be October 30th. It's a Friday at 11 a.m. Central. So you guys can check that out. Go sign up at ortusolutions.com/events/webinar, and that'll be great. Okay. So, conference announcement. We actually have a new conference from our friends over at DigitalOcean. So, this one I just saw today, actually. So, they're announcing their first virtual global 24-hour community conference. So, it's going to start at 10 a.m. on November the 10th, and that's going to go for 24 hours, apparently. So, I know that Microsoft Build, they had one where basically it was 3 days, and they had live stuff all through the night for all the different time zones, and they repeated some sessions at different times too, so you can pretty much find out exactly what you needed, So it was pretty interesting. So I'm excited about that one. I've already signed up. It's free to RSVP, and they have over 80 tech-focused sessions, lots of product announcements, and breakout rooms for developer, focus.
So when you say 24-hour conference, does that mean like the sessions go nonstop?
The sessions go non-stop, and like I said with the build one, they had live presenters in all different time zones, so there was always live content, but they also had replays of recorded replays, and they also have live replays too. So the most popular content from the first couple of days were actually repeated at different times on the third day for that.
That's actually kind of cool. I mean, because it's hard to schedule a conference in something that's going to work for every time zone. And so it's kind of like they get to like spread it out. Half the time is the middle of the night for us, half the time is the middle of the night for somebody else, but repeating the content kind of gives everybody a chance to see it also.
Yeah, and they did have some of the presenters for the build one. They said that's my only experience of one of those all-night ones. But yeah, they had them basically get up early and do like 5 a.m. sessions, and then they're doing like 11 p.m. sessions. So they didn't want everything just recorded in those other time zones. So I thought it was kind of neat. And so it looks like a good set of speakers here too. So I'm not sure how they'll do it with pre-recorded and existing content, but it looks like
Just
a great little
distinct
conference.
lack of CFML content. That's the only thing I can find wrong with it.
Yeah, but it's still relevant for a lot of our deploys. I mean, DigitalOcean I know a lot of people are deploying there. Ortus deploys to DigitalOcean, so a lot of great features. And they're really stepping up their features, but without overdoing complexity like AWS, which is why I like them, because you can do everything that you want to do, just it's a little different, a little simpler. Well, maybe not everything, but you can do a lot. So
Actually, you know what? I think Python's the only. Oh, and there's a PHP. Python and PHP are the two topics that actually name a language. Oh wait, no, Go. Networking and Go. There's three of them.
it still looks like a great conference. So if you guys want to find out more
No, it needs
about
ColdFusion, Gavin. Needs more ColdFusion.
okay, Brad, you don't need to worry about it then. John Ferrar's asking if they have aggressive swarm support.
Aggressive.
I don't know
Wow.
about aggressive.
Back
swarm
off,
support.
John. You're triggering me.
Yeah.
That's when you go to a conference. See, I want aggressive ColdFusion support. I think that's what that means.
Yeah.
Do you support Swarm? Do you do it? I don't know. I'm scared.
Yeah. It was pretty funny. Okay, so next up we have some online meetups. So the first one is the Online CF Meetup. So we have a CF AMA, which is Ask Me Anything.
Nice.
So Charlie,
like anything that could be dangerous.
well, it's CF Ask Me Anything. So
So ColdFusion
yeah,
within the ColdFusion universe.
yep. So it's going to be hosted with Charlie Earhart and Dan Wilson. So they're going to have their first ever Ask Me Anything session, so you can find out more about anything ColdFusion related. So whether it's about coding challenges or using CF features, configuration, tuning, deployment, security, the new version, recent versions, or the state of CF, whatever. So that's going to be this Thursday, October
Like
22nd.
a town hall.
Yep, 11 a.m. Central Time. So register on the meetup.com site. They've got a great group there, and they've got more content coming out. I really like to see this.
Is it Charlie and Dan that are doing the answering?
Yep, Charlie and Dan. So between Charlie and Dan Wilson, you got a lot of experience there. So you should have a lot of good questions. And since this isn't Ask Me Anything, they may even open it up to the audience too. It'll be kind of interesting. So I'm curious how that's going to go. I know that's pretty popular. A lot of people are doing these, and it's good just to have more content. And it's great to see the online meetup doing so well here. And Charlie said, yes, we will. So I guess if you got a question, you open up the mic and go from there.
Sounds fun.
Yep.
I like that.
Okay. So someone's making a crack about our disc. Yeah, we can't afford a bigger disc, Scott. You're right.
Yeah, it's all we could spring for. That's why we need more Patreon supporters so Gavin and I can buy a bigger virtual desk to sit behind.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't want us bigger. We want us a little further
actually
out.
make my coffee sit on the virtual desk. Oh no, I gotta.
No, not quite.
Oh, this is hard. How do I? Do it just right.
Well, Brad's playing with his coffee. I'll remind you that last week, the Online CF Meetup, I was actually there speaking about building APIs with ColdFusion Part 1. Start
They'll
coding
let anybody
APIs
in that
today.
place, won't they?
They will, apparently. But yeah, so I did a step-by-step sort of API creation, and I went back to old school, like starting your site, adding some AJAX responses, or sort of like API responses from a CFM file, looked at CFCs and sort of evolved over time, adding all the different bits and pieces you may want to make your API more friendly and more usable. And we got up to the point where basically I said, you know, we show you all this stuff. There's still all these other things you can do, but why reinvent the wheel? Next time, part 2, we're going to look at frameworks and how they can make your life easier.
Part 2.
And so, but got
So
good feedback
I think I had
from it.
meetings. I didn't get to see the meetup. How did
You
it go?
haven't watched the recording? The recording's
No,
up there
I'm
too, so we'll share
busy.
that.
So much stuff to do.
Yeah, we had a really good feedback from it in part 1, and a lot of people are interested in part 2. Adam Tuttle was in there, answering a few things, and he said that he's happy to do a Taffy one at some point too, so we can do the ColdBox one. So I'll show that in part 2, and then he can show Taffy. But basically, it was good for just someone who maybe has an old legacy site and they want to add a little bit of an API in there without having to, use a whole framework or start from scratch. And so it's a good one for sure.
That'd be cool. I mean, as much as I like ColdBox, I've only heard good things about Taffy, and I'm honestly still pleased to see Adam around supporting it.
He's been doing a lot more lately. He's been doing some videos and stuff too, apparently.
Yeah.
And so
Because I mean, I've known just too many people that have built their own entire API framework because they were terrified of using some kind of off-the-shelf framework. And I guarantee they spent 7 times more time than they needed to. So, geez, whether it's ColdBox or Taffy, at least take a look at what's out there and how easy it is.
Yep, exactly. And so that was what part 1 was sort of, if you're getting started and you build your own, these are some of the things you'd want to consider. So I kind of evolved to the point where I started using a response object, and a lot of the things we're using in ColdBox 1 automatically. But I did have one issue with it. I was running everything in Lucee, so I did go back and convert everything to be ColdFusion friendly. The only thing that isn't ColdFusion friendly is that ColdFusion wasn't basically setting the MIME type automatically. I thought it used to do that, but all the code is there, everything's there, so it should run on Lucee or ColdFusion. So if people want to go play with that, the recording is shared in the show notes. And yeah, part 2, I'll be coming back in November to take on part 2.
Nice.
We also had a couple other user groups last week. So the Mid-Michigan CFUG had a virtual one with Nick Kayakowski speaking about code workflows. And so that was pretty interesting, building dev, test, and production environments with his AWS container service. That was a link through Facebook, and they use Teams. So I don't see the recording yet, but I have reached out to them to see if they'll share the recording. Because that one actually, I didn't get to see that. I had another appointment, so I'm hoping that we can, get that one online and check that out. And then the Seattle CFUG also had a meeting last week talking about integrating your ColdFusion app with the Thinkific platform.
Thinkific.
Nice. I really like that. I've been using it a lot for some of my customers. It's got a great API, really simple, RESTful API.
I don't remember what Thinkific is.
It's like Teachable and all those other online learning platforms.
Well, that's right. We talked about this a few weeks ago. Yes.
And so that was last Wednesday, October 14th, and the recording should be up soon. And then next month, November, they have a deep dive into the Thinkific API. So they'll be doing even more detail. They'll be adding users, updating users, getting lists of people who are taking your certain courses all through the API. So if you're looking at using APIs, any third parties, this might be a really good double session, and basically getting used to working with them inside of ColdFusion. So the recording should be available for that soon. We'll share them as soon as we have them. But sign up for the next one as well. So a lot of great content.
It's nice to see the user groups cranking some stuff out, whether it's the online meetup or Mid-Michigan or Seattle. I'm liking this.
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff, and I'm trying to get it. So if you guys know of any, user group meetings that I don't know about or we're not showing on the show, please let us know. We'd like to include them. So just drop us an email, gavin@ortussolutions.com, and I'll throw them in the show notes so we can share them, because a lot of great content, and that's one of the reasons we do this podcast, is to get the information out there to more people. So, well, it is October. We got 10 days, 11 days left in October.
It's Hacktober.
It's HacktoberFest, exactly. So there's still time to sign up for Hacktober. There's still time to get your pull requests in. You get 4 pull requests to a repo that is supporting Hacktoberfest. You get them approved, and basically you can get a free tea or a free tree. So they're donating or planting trees on your behalf if you don't want to do the T-shirt option. The T-shirts are pretty cool, so it's a tough decision, I must say. So I've got a few of them. I keep forgetting to wear them, but I'll have to bust one out next week. I really enjoy their shirts. They're top quality shirts for sure. So, but Hacktoberfest is a celebration of open source essentially, and trying to get the community together, working with open source. So find out more at hacktoberfest.digitalocean.com, and then you can register. They are making it a little harder this year because previous years people just spammed a bunch of GitHub repos trying to get their pull requests to count. So this year you have to actually, as the repo owner, basically sign up or opt in. And so if the repo is not tagged as Hacktoberfest, then your pull request has to be tagged as Hacktoberfest accepted. Otherwise you won't get credit. So they actually make you watch a video, which is pretty neat too, so you can learn a little bit more about everything and make sure you obey the rules. Because if you get two bad pull requests, you're booted. No more.
I need to send a couple more pulls. I have 2 pulls I sent to Lucee, which I didn't even do for Hacktoberfest. It's just pull requests I was doing. I just noticed, though, they don't show up as accepted. They show up as in review.
Yeah, there's a 14-day period, or whatever that they have.
Both of these are already merged. What's there to review about it? I thought they just had 14 days to be merged, and once they were merged, they were good.
No, if the repo is flagged as that, they just have a review period to make sure that someone's just not spamming or whatever. If there's too many out there, they just have that period so it's not approved completely. So
does this mean that Lucee needs to take additional action on my pull request for them to count, or does it just mean that once the timer counts down, they'll automatically count?
Once the timer counts down, you're good. It just gives the person the repo time to, because they don't, they have to be merged or tagged as Hacktoberfest accepted. So even if your pull request doesn't
but once it's merged or tagged, doesn't that mean that's already been approved?
Yeah, they're doing it on their side. What are they trying to prevent? I think they're just trying to prevent on the other side. Or I don't know, unless they people want to change their mind. I don't know, actually. Watch the video and you'll find out.
You're not going to come up with an answer that's going to satisfy me, Gavin.
Yep, I probably won't.
This doesn't make any sense.
But yeah, so there's a review period, but their little platform shows you how many pull requests have been, accepted or rejected, etc. So anyway, you got 10, 11 days left. Reach out to some CFML repos and see what they need done. Updating documentation is a good way to do it.
The main Lucee repo and the Lucee docs repo are tagged as Hacktoberfest. Nice. Scott Steinbeck, you mentioned that they can mark the pull request Hacktoberfest approved, or the main repo itself has to have the Hacktoberfest tag, which in this case, yes, it can't just be sitting there open. Which is another good point. Feel free to reach out and bug the maintainers if you've sent something, because one of these Lucee pull requests, I actually reached out and I pinged Misha at Lucee because I was like, hey, can you go ahead and merge this? Because I'd like to get credit for Hacktoberfest now that I realized I made it in the right window, because he was kind of dragging his feet on it. So bug people as well. But I'm pretty certain CF Docs has the tag. I went through and added the Hacktoberfest tag to all the Ortus repos that I think I had permissions to add it to. So that was a ton of our docs repos, our ColdBox repos, CommandBox repos.
Yeah.
Send them over.
Yeah, it's good. And if you're new to pull requests, they try and guide you through the process too. So, and then Scott said he's trying to ping Matt Gifford about a few pull requests. So it's good to sort of give back, and I like the fact that they're being more aware with the opting in. So,
I think that had to happen naturally because people were probably just abusing this in mass. So it's kind of a drastic move to go to a opt-in only, but I bet it cut down a crazy amount of just spam stuff that they had.
Possibly, but people might still be spamming. But they make you watch the video when you sign up, so you do get some education.
They make you start the video and like fast forward to the end and then click the button. But yeah, watch the video.
Oh, I don't think
watch the video
I
in air
just had
quotes.
it playing somewhere else. But anyway. Okay. Apparently, there's another conference Charlie just shared. He said the Percona Live online conference about MySQL, Postgres, and more. It's today and tomorrow at percona.com/live/agenda. So we'll add that to the show notes as well. But thanks for sharing that, Charlie. Percona's got some pretty cool database tools, don't they? That's the one that creates all the really slick tools. I'm trying to remember what they are.
I'm not familiar with Percona. Like it rings a bell, but
Oh, they got some really nice database tools. I thought you showed me one of them once. Maybe it was Scott.
it's probably Scott.
But yep, so Percona Live conferences. Here you go. October 20th and 21st. Tune in now. They're on YouTube, Twitch, and they got Slack. So, pretty cool. But yeah, they got some really good tools. A lot of great products. I think their replication stuff is what I was looking at, and yeah, they've definitely got a lot of good stuff. So, very cool. Thanks for sharing that, Charlie. Okay, well, I'll add that to the conference list as well. But that gets to the end of our news and events, but we have a update on CFCasts. So we actually have some more CFconfig videos. Isn't it nice that CFconfig videos come out, Brad? You don't have to do anything.
I know. I have nothing to do with these. It's fantastic.
Yep, so Grant Copley has released 2 more this week. So they're all part of the Configure Your CFML Servers with CFconfig series. And we have Managing Data Sources and Transfer Command. So every week we're just pumping out more content, and very soon we have some top secret, probably not top secret at all, but we have some of our El Salvadorian team releasing some videos. So we'll be having the first batch of Spanish content coming very soon here. So
That's awesome.
it's pretty cool. Okay, so next up we have conferences and training. So as Charlie mentioned, we got that Percona Live conference today. And then that's today and tomorrow. And then later on this week, we have our Ortus workshop. So we have our 2-day workshop led by Luis Majano, the box king himself. So that's going to be on October 22nd and 23rd. ColdBox 6, Hero to Superhero. And that's going to be the API edition with lots of BDD testing, apparently. Next up, we have a 2-day workshop in November, and this is the much awaited, much anticipated quick workshop led by our very own Eric Peterson. John, you're in the chat. Have you signed up for the conference, the workshop yet? It is on ordersolutions.com.
Talk about putting them on the spot.
You can go to the events page and sign up right now. We shared the Eventbrite link last week. So we expect you there, John. If not, we expect a doctor's note.
Doctor's note. You better have COVID, man, if you're not there. Wait, no, don't do that. We don't want that.
No. And then remember, if you're using the podcast 10 code, you'll sign up and save 10% on our Ortus workshop. So don't forget that. Okay, we have a little chat going on here. Let's see what everyone's been talking about. So a lot about Percona, and then John has some suggestions on CFCast. So he said there's no way for people to unsubscribe, and he says,
why would you ever want to unsubscribe?
Yeah, John, it's a black hole. Once you're in there, it's just content forever.
You can check out anytime you want, but you can never leave.
Yep, and then he wants reviews and feedback. So we basically decided to use the contact form right now for feedback. And reviews, we're looking at adding some like Discus or something like that. But a lot of times they get they get outdated pretty quick with the comments, and if we update the videos, then the comments are no longer relevant. So we haven't added them yet, but we'll definitely give them the feedback, John. Don't worry about that. Hotel box.
Discuss. John doesn't like Discuss because of the the license change they had a while back where they had to accept something.
Uh,
I'm not a big fan of Discuss, but for different reasons. We debated about whether or not we should put it on ForgeBox, and we did it, and it just turned into a support forum where there shouldn't be a support forum. Everybody's asking for help. You're like, yeah, this isn't the place to ask for help.
yeah.
But whatever.
Yeah, that's similar with the videos, but we'll take it under advice. Okay, we also mentioned the Deploy for DigitalOcean, so they have their global 24-hour conference November 10th at 10 a.m. Eastern. So don't forget to RSVP for that, and they even have hourly goodie giveaways, which is pretty cool.
Dang.
Yeah, I
like
that.
Check under your chair and see if there's a golden key or something.
Yeah, that sounds creepy. Yep. Okay, and then after that, so a week later, we have the Adobe CF Summit 2020, November 17th through the 19th. That's online free, and it's going to be amazing. They got to do something pretty awesome for the 25th year of ColdFusion. I remember
it's a big milestone.
Yeah, 2020. Oh, well, 2020. And
The
after 20
year,
years, yeah,
I remember that year.
We had a big old party. They had DJs, and they had those cool hats, and everybody looked gangster.
Do you still have your mug, the like CF20 mug? I say a mug. It was a glass. It was like a clear glass with like a thing printed on it.
I don't know if I got that one. I got the hat. I don't know if I got the mug.
I'm pretty certain that was from the 20 year. I have it downstairs. I use it all the time. Unfortunately, the like paint is like coming off. I say paint. It's like printed on somehow. It's not etched in.
I don't know if I ever got that one. I know I got the hat. I've still got that somewhere. But no.
I don't know where the hat is. I probably have it downstairs in my closet. I definitely got the hat.
But yeah, that was a lot of fun. But yeah, so
they're gonna have to have like a twice as big shindig for the 26th year when we're all back in person next year in Vegas again. So
yeah. Okay, so Adobe ColdFusion Certification is also available online. So if you're wanting to do that, I don't believe you have to wait for a date. So you can register. Introductory offer is $4.99, so you can get that training. There's 50 plus videos online, over 10 hours of content, and then there's the online multiple choice quiz at the end. And if you pass, you get all the prizes and glory of being a Adobe ColdFusion certified developer, and you also get a cool badge when you're on the ColdFusion portal. So that's the important thing, right?
It's all about the street cred.
But yeah, so they do list the developers there too as well. So it's a little extra feedback, but it's a lot of good content in there too. We helped with the CF Summit training last year, and yeah, it was good. I learned a few things about some of the new features, etc. So there's definitely good content in there. You'll learn something for sure. Okay, and then I guess you can talk about the next thing since you're going to be presenting.
Apparently. Well, look, I'm on the website and everything. Ooh, yeah. They even came up with a description for my talk. I don't know what it says.
Google Translate.
Charla introductoria está innovadora. Something about introduction and innovation.
So
ITB Latam. So that's December 3rd through 4th, and they did it in person last year. I wasn't there. I think John Clausen was the only gringo who actually went down in person last year.
Yeah.
But this year, it's going to be a live virtual conference in Espanol and Inglés.
Yep. So that's new. I didn't know it's
in English. Is this price a typo? $7?
Nope, that's the price. We wanted to make sure it's region friendly, and obviously the cost of the dollar doesn't go as far, or it goes way further, I guess, down there. They don't earn quite the same, so we wanted to make sure the price was in the right earning power for them. So $7 will get you a subscription for 2 days of virtual conference. So if you guys are too cheap for the normal one,
and it looks like we're leaning heavily on our El Salvadorian team, which is awesome.
Yep. So there's gonna be a lot of great Spanish, but there will be a couple of sessions in English because Brad and John's Spanish is not so great.
Yeah. So what I'm gonna do is I'm be like, "Hola, me amo Brad." No, I'm gonna like talk in English, but then my slides will all have the Spanish subtitles, and I think there'll be people helping translate. But I'm not sure exactly how it's gonna work because I usually talk way too much to fit all those words in the slides. So we'll have to work on that. But the goal is to be Spanish and English, so people who don't really speak English are still getting good stuff out of the topics. So
Yeah, and I
of
know
course
that
my
there.
talk is CommandBox.
Yeah, there's obviously a lot of people in El Salvador do speak English, and they're just more comfortable with Spanish, and so they can still enjoy the content. But we're trying to really focus on that market, especially with the roots of a lot of especially the Ortus team. I've got a lot of Latam flavor, and yeah, so we're supporting that, and the CFCast videos is just another way to support that. So we're trying to spread the word, and one of the missions of Ortus is to spread ColdFusion to a bigger community, and this is one of the ways we're doing that. So
There you go. I just translated my talk description into English to see what it said. I have a feeling Paulina probably wrote that for me.
yep,
Looks
okay,
good to me. I'm not going to complain.
yep. So that's our rundown of conferences in 2020. So if you guys hear of any more, let us know, and we'll add them to the list so people don't miss out. And yeah, a lot of great content coming. But next up, let's talk about blogs, tweets, and videos of the week. We got a lot of good content here too. So
We're only like halfway through the show notes.
I know, I know, man. I knew it was gonna be a long one. Brad's here. So first up, we have that podcast that we mentioned. So Michaela and Kishore here. So don't forget to go check that out. I have not listened yet, but I'm going to be tuning in later today to try and catch up and see what else they're going to have at CF Summit. And we also have some stuff from our friend Ben. So let's see what Ben Adele is talking about today.
I saw this on Twitter, but I didn't get a chance to read it.
Yeah, so he wants to check and see if there's a way to tell if a struct is of type ordered or linked in Lucee. So it was kind of interesting because
I don't think CFML gives us a method, but I assume he's going to get the Java class name off of it.
Yeah, so he mentioned a couple of different things because and previously talked about how ordered structs are great for MongoDB interactions because the order does matter. And so that was, one of those things. I've done work with APIs before where the order of your content really matters, and it doesn't take an array. It takes a struct, but it has to be the right order. Very annoying. But ordered structs gives you a key to sort of solve that. And so what he wrote a couple of different methods. He has is normal struct, is linked struct, and then is weak struct. And so I was like, I don't even know what a weak struct is. So
it's a struct that's not very strong.
I understand that. But yeah, so he used a couple of different methods. So he's using a struct of type, and then yeah, he dives into some deeper stuff. But he's looking at using the Lucee runtime type struct, looking at these different types, and then basically creates this function. And so
it looks like the Java class, so it's looking like the main Java class doesn't change between types. They're all Lucee runtime type struct impl, which in Lucee, Misha uses a lot of interfaces, so it'll be like a struct interface. And in the actual implementation, the concrete class will always have impl at the end. So struct impl is the actual implementation. And the interface usually lives in the loader. The implementation lives in the core. But anyway, that's just how Lucee works. So I see that basically if it's a struct impl instance, then he calls a get type method on it, which must just be an underlying part of that. And that's actually how he differentiates. Nice.
Yeah, so you got an undefined type, a weak type, a linked type, a sync type, a regular type, and a soft type. And so
this is interesting because I kind of feel as though ColdFusion should have a first class method to do this.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of, this happens now and then where there's stuff that ColdFusion does that is really being done with behind the scenes Java magic, and we don't always expose to the ColdFusion developers the tools they need to be able to tell what a particular data type is. But yeah, if you can declare a struct of a different type, presumably there should be a way to be able to tell what that is after the fact. That's actually a first-class feature of a language, which I'm sure would be very easy to implement. It makes me tempted to put in an enhancement ticket, or just to look and see if there's one already. But Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good idea. Yeah, I mean, like you say, it makes sense if you're making them and you need, especially if you need to require them. Like some things would be useful to have that as a requirement. So, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Think
very
it through.
interesting.
Just the other day, what was it? Oh, I was fixing something in CFconfig for Misha actually, the Lucee lead developer, because he's using it now with his job, and I already used ordered structs inside of CFconfig just because that's naturally what Lucee gives you when you deserialize JSON. It gives you ordered structs, so you keep the order to the JSON, which is really nice. Adobe ColdFusion engineers, hope you're listening because you don't do it and you suck. Well, you don't suck, but ColdFusion sucks for not doing it. Anyway, and Misha asked me if I could declare several other structs that CFconfig just declares to throw data in while it's processing. He asked me if I could declare them as ordered structs as well. It was for custom attributes for data sources. Because when I saved his custom data sources stuff, it would all get jumbled together and written out to the config file in a random order, which just is annoying because you import your config and there's a bunch of changes in the config file that are really just random, nonsense. And so I went through and I made all of the structs in the Lucee implementation be ordered just so you would get support for that. Charlie, I'm not talking about support for order structs. I'm talking about the deserialized JSON function. In Lucee, when you hand JSON to a deserialized JSON function, you always get back an order struct, period. That way, when you reserialize it and you write it to a file, the file doesn't change. That's how CommandBox, when it's modifying your server.json and your box.json and your cfconfig.json, it doesn't reorder the file and rearrange stuff all the time because of just, whatever random order ColdFusion decides to pull the keys in, which just makes a ton of sense. Like, I mean, why wouldn't you do that once you think about it? But anyway, this whole talk of order structs just was making me think of adding more order structs into CFconfig because it makes a lot of sense when you're reading configuration and writing it back out that stuff stays in the same order, and you don't get that with a typical struct.
Yeah.
Anyway, I like stuff like this. This is useful.
Okay, so next up, we have a blog post from Will DeBruin, and this is an interesting one. He actually brought it up in the Box Team Slack, and then he blogged about it too. So, CB Security and JWT, when are you authenticated? So this was
When
an
are
interesting.
you?
Yeah, so
That's like an existential question. I don't know. Am I authenticated now, Gavin? I'm beginning to question this.
certifiable, but don't know about authenticated. But yeah, so basically he was working through a problem, and then a weird edge case came up. And so basically some of the functions inside of the JWT and CB security, when you're working with them, you can, it'll check to see if someone's authenticated, you can see if someone's logged on, but some of the other methods you use to check to see if somebody is actually logged in or not will actually log them in. If the JWT token
You
is
like
actually in there.
accidentally log someone in?
So kind of, yeah. And
Kind of.
so that's what he was getting at. So basically, when you're coming in here and you're passing the token, it'll actually log them in because it passes the token, checks to see if they're actually available, and in that process, it would log them in. And so he gave a lot of great data, which I really like about Phil. He's very detailed, and that's really good. And he asked if we should put a pull request in for this. And I'm like, this is a very good question. Like it's it's something that Luis and we should really talk about because there's a lot of different pieces going on here. Because one of the other things is this is logged in. That's actually bitten me, not with this CB security. I actually had a previous API that was using this, and it was working pretty well. But I had this code where essentially it would log them in at the start of the process when you check to see if the JWT was good, and at the end of it, it would log them out. Yeah. And the weird thing is that depending on how you're storing that log in, log out, and what you're doing, I had some, asynchronous type code running where I would upload 10 or 15 different things at once, but that log out would fire across, and I didn't think that it had cookies enough to actually keep a connection, to keep a session.
Screwing with other threads.
And it was screwing up other requests, and so.
Oh wow, that's
and
interesting.
in here you can, he actually talks about how there is a setting on where you want to store your session storage, but he was saying since you shouldn't really be storing as a session, it should really be called where do you want to store the user ID, and in a cache or something. But Yeah, because you don't want to have sessions on your API, which is kind of a pain. Because if you have a site that is a site that allows normal logins and APIs, and someone logs in and you want to use the same code to check if they're logged in, you get to some interesting sort of edge cases there. So very interesting blog post. If you're using CP Security and JWT, I would definitely recommend reading through it so you understand what it's currently doing. But this is something that Luis and I and probably a couple other members will probably should talk about and figure out what we actually want it to do, and what's the best for it to do, and then go from there, because it is pretty interesting. But yeah, it's, and like I said, one of those log in log outs. Like, that's fine if it's basically storing it in the request, But if you are storing it in a session, because you're maybe your security service looks in the session to see what's there, or or whatever, then yeah, logging in and logging out will actually cause unexpected side effects, as I found out. So, but yeah, so interesting blog post, and like I said, we definitely need to look and see. But I wouldn't think the pass token would log them in, but I guess it does. So that's what he was finding anyway. So pretty interesting. But yeah, the thing is, yeah, what do we expect to happen, and why did we do it the way we did? So I know that Luis will definitely want to discuss this before we just start making big changes there. So but yeah, so thanks, Phil, for sharing that one. So what do we got next, Brad?
A live stream from Matthew Clemente. He's done a bunch of live streams recently. This one was adding a CFML language definition to Prism.js, learning by trial and error part 2.
Yeah.
I didn't watch any of it, but I saw it on Twitter. It looked pretty interesting.
Yep, I like the fact he's still sharing these, and I like the trial and error ones too. Like, whenever I do a training, I usually purposely add stuff in that breaks, just to show people that solving the problem is usually a better learning experience than just having it work from the beginning. So I learn a lot from people making mistakes, and I learn a lot from my own mistakes. Well, hopefully I do. But yeah, so I always like seeing those, so thanks, Matthew, for sharing that. And then next up, we actually have a blog post that I got from Adam Cameron's blog. He was sharing a blog post from one of his friends that but Ben Brum, but he was talking about hierarchical data in SQL, the ultimate guide. So
interesting.
Yeah, I thought this was pretty interesting. And quite often we have those recursive relationships, we have something like
yeah, I've done a lot
parent,
of those.
children, etc. And so this apparently walks you through what is it, adjacency list, nested sets, flat tables, bridging tables, etc. So all these different options and why you should use what, and maybe what you should use. And so yeah, I thought this was a pretty good blog post. I started reading through it. I'm like, I'm gonna bookmark this one for sure, because yeah, it's something we come up against quite often, right? Where you got parent, children's, and especially the same type, like employees and managers.
I've never used any of the built-in stuff that some of the database engines have for doing hierarchies. I've done a lot of like parent-child lists, pretty common, and I've done several implementations that used. I mean, we called it like it was a nested set model. We called it like left-right node. Where each record would have like a left and a right number that would point to like the parents. That was always cool because you can easily get like ancestors and descendancies, but that model always sucked because inserting a single record could end up with updating thousands of records. So I like seeing these design patterns all laid out though.
Yeah,
it really covers a lot of them. Yeah, here we go, nested set. He has a whole section on it.
Yep. And he's got the MySQL and Postgres and Oracle versions of some of the stuff too, which is neat. I like to see the differences. So yeah, I mean, it's a long blog post for sure. I'm not even halfway through scrolling here. So
yeah.
But yeah, he gives you the pros and cons for each one. A SQL anti-patterns book. Wow.
Nice.
Here's your nested set. Yeah. So like I said, this is definitely one I'm going to bookmark because it's going to be too long for me to go through.
It'd be nice to review those. I remember when we first had the discussion when we were building ContentBox, and we were like, okay, it's not going to be BlogBox. It's going to be ContentBox. We need to have pages. Okay, they need to be able to be hierarchical with, n levels deep. And then the next question was, how are we going to store that? And how are you going to find all the children? How much of that do you denormalize?
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of good stuff in there.
As much as I hated the homework at the time, this was the most interesting stuff I had in my computer science major, I think, was just data structures and talking about models and things. It was really boring at the time because I didn't. It was so theoretical. I was like, I'm never going to use this. This is dumb. What is this? And then you start writing like apps, and you come across these design patterns, and you're like, oh, so that's where I would use, an adjacency list or a nested set model. But
Yeah, I still got a couple of my old books, the Gang of Four, software engineering.
Oh yeah,
design patterns books. I actually brought them from New Zealand. So there's a few of them I
are
saved.
they written with a New Zealand accent?
Yeah, probably. It's not like you can tell until someone reads them out to you. But yeah, so I thought this was a really good blog post to share. So it was really cool that Adam Cameron posted that on his blog. And he says he hasn't killed his blog yet. He just doesn't have anything worth writing. So some people might agree. Okay, we got another one here from Ben Adele. And so this one's on his little email series using postmark. And so in a previous version, someone told him about postmark tags and how to use them for grouping transactional emails. So before he was writing his own like headers, and then he was sort of like trying to pass them out. But if you use a postmark tag, which is basically a meta tag, you can use the CFML param for it. And if you actually tag it with a certain prefix, so x-pm-tag, then you can actually set up things. And the cool part with it is it'll actually auto-create the interface for you. So it'll actually have the tag listed here in the postmark interface, and it gives you a quick filters. You actually will display the tags you created. So they use it for transactional email. So if they have a daily digest or a password reset or a welcome email, and so now they can easily filter all those emails that are being sent out by that type. So, tags are a nice, easy way to do it. I know other providers allow you to have more than one. I think Postmark, you're only allowed one tag, but a lot of the other ones will have multiple tags that you can do, or categories, depending on what they are. But he was,
I see
impressed.
Ben's pushing hard on the Lucee tag or tag island feature.
Yeah,
he really likes that.
Yep, and somewhere he's just like, nothing special in the code except for the really cool Lucee island tag. So in the script CFC, he puts in a block of output.
I've actually found myself using that a bit more. The tag islands I wasn't opposed to when they came out. I just thought I'd never use them. I was like, meh, whatever. I'd rather CF include a view. But honestly, I've actually come across a handful of cases. And sometimes it's just because I have a big old chunk of legacy CFM and I'm sticking it inside like a task runner. And I don't want to convert it all to script, but I want the task runner to be in script. And so, I just take a chunk of logic and just, stick it in tag island and like, hey, it works. Get it out the door, refactor it later. Or even tiny examples like this. I know. Examples like this where it'd be like almost a little silly to break out a separate CFM file just for like 7 lines of code, and CF include it. Like that's nice and clean. It's very clear, all in one file. I kind of like it.
Yep.
And look at him using encode for HTML, making nice, safe HTML. Good on you, Ben.
Yep. Very cool. Okay, next up we have another little update from Zach Spitzer. He's done a new memory scope report inside the Lucee Performance Analyzer. So you can actually see the size of server, application, and session scopes. And so
that's nice.
Yep.
See, that's something it's really always been elusive for ColdFusion developers. Adobe ColdFusion years ago added the memory tracking stuff. And it was like, don't turn it on, it'll murder your server, at least in production. And I can take a heap dump of my server, but being able to like pick apart like how much of this nonsense is a session scope or an application scope. This is a pretty cool little thing. I'm curious what the overhead is on this. If it's something that runs in production without slowing anything down. I haven't even played with it. I haven't even seen it.
Yep. I need to try. He's been updating it periodically here. It's kind of nice. So definitely should try that and check that out. Looks pretty handy.
So he's showing the size of a scope in kilobytes, the number of keys, the number of sessions. Yeah, that's pretty sweet.
Yep.
Have to
Just
play with that.
great, useful little numbers, quick reference. And I like the fact you can see them across all the different contexts as well, all the different servers,
Yeah.
if you're running multiples. Okay, we have a blog post from Julian Halliwell as well. Forcing Lucee to recheck the physical paths of application-defined mappings without a restart. And so Ben Nadell actually had this post over a year ago where he says, this mappings and expand path are not working in Lucee. And so what it boils down to is the confusion that when the application first runs, it checks to see if a path exists. And if that path doesn't exist, then the mapping basically just gets ignored. And then the mapping becomes a normal mapping where /test becomes inside the root of your app.
So it kind of caches.
Yeah, and exactly, it caches it until the next restart of your server. And so that's kind of awkward.
I think I've run into that before where I'm fiddling with mappings and I can't get them to work and I'm like, what the heck is wrong? And I restart and it just magically works. And you kind of scratch your head and go, that was weird.
Yeah, so all these mappings, if the folder doesn't exist, it'll basically just put it inside the root of the app. And then since it's a mapping, it caches it. And then you're stuck. Huh. So interesting. If you put a new one in there and the folder exists, no problem. It checks for new ones, but existing mappings are cached. And so
I'm sure that's a performance benefit, but yeah, that's interesting.
And if I zoom in a little bit here, you can see as an example of how you can actually recheck application mappings. And so, but if you go through the page context and get config and get the application mapping, and you loop through them all, you can do a mapping.check on each one, and then it'll recheck it. It'll basically force it to go check all those paths again. So that's a backdoor that Julian found. He raised a ticket for it as well.
So just to confirm, this is created when you physically create the folder on disk after you've asked Lucee to expand the mapping at least once. Is that right?
No, when the app starts, it does all, because it's in the mappings, it does it all then apparently.
Okay, so my question stands but slightly modified. This happens when you create the folder physically on disk after the app is started. Is that
correct?
Right?
That's what seems to be the confusion point, and that was found by Ben. And so, yeah, so Julian was just explaining the edge case and then showing the workaround, which interesting way to get in there. So
yeah, I see. He also has a ticket he put in for Lucee as well.
So I know it's running long, but I wanted to wind you up here with a tweet. So let me share this one. So there's a tweet from Brad Wood where everybody misunderstood what he was talking about.
I don't know if they misunderstood. They all just had their own stuff to add. Yeah, no, I'd been playing with this for a client, and I just wanted to point out that ColdFusion. Let me back up. When you use file read in CFML to read a file, the entire file gets read into memory all the way, and then you get to work with it as one giant string, right? So if you have like a 75 gigabyte log file, and you do file read on it, like that entire thing will be read into RAM, and then now you have one giant string that represents that, which may be fine for tiny files, but that doesn't scale well. And I was working with a client that did these massive imports, and they would have, million line files, and they were reading them in one line at a time. And I wanted to point out that in Java, it's very obvious. I don't even know that there is a way in Java to read an entire file in at once. It's just not what Java does. You get a stream and you do read line, or read character, and you can build it up through a buffer. A lot of people don't realize that ColdFusion has the same functionality that Java does. You can read in a massive file, but just one line at a time. And that's the file open, file is EOF or into file, file read line, and then file close. The only downside is it's incumbent upon you to make sure you call file close. Otherwise, that file handle will be left open if your page quits and it never closes that file, and that can be problematic. But no matter how big the file is, you just keep calling file read line, and you get one line at a time. So if you're parsing through a XYZ gigabyte file, it all goes through RAM at one time or another, but broken up as a bunch of tiny little strings that as soon as you're finished can immediately be garbage collected. So it's a lot faster and it has a lot more overhead. Now, as people were pointing out, there's like 11 trillion classes in Java that let you do this, but every possible imaginable way. There's like random access files. There's things let you read from the end of a file. But if you're just doing basic like line by line, I really like these functions, and I was playing around with them just with some massive files where this would be an interesting thing to blog. I was playing around with it where I had like 20 threads that would all like simultaneously be processed into file line by line, just to you see how it performed. And I didn't test it on Adobe, but on Lucee, I was actually quite pleased to find out that the file read line method is inherently thread safe. You don't even need to like lock it. So if two threads both say, all right, give me a line, go, they won't get the same line. It'll internally take care of a locking. So whatever thread, wins gets one line and the next thread gets the next line, which is pretty sweet. So anyway, less overhead, doesn't fill up your memory as much. And it's the same as using the Java classes, but as part of the Twitter thread we're discussing, when you create a Java class in ColdFusion with create object and you call methods on it, there's a nominal amount of overhead in Java reflection, which is used to be able to dynamically call Java classes. It's not very noticeable for just a handful of calls, but in some sort of tight loop where you're doing, thousands, maybe tens of thousands of calls to Java methods, you can actually have a fairly noticeable performance buildup of all those additional reflection methods. And so these being first-class built-in ColdFusion functions don't have any of that overhead, but you still get the low, memory profile of reading a giant file in line by line. So anyway, that was just my little PSA the other day.
Yeah, I know reflection is bad and it can cause you a lot of trouble. I didn't think about it on every single
I wouldn't
loop
say it's
call.
bad, but
Okay,
it's
it can
overhead.
cause you some overhead problems.
I mean, one of the times that I really had problems with it was when I was doing real-time automation with my Raspberry Pi. Right, I have a little hat with the LEDs, and it was scrolling words across. Right, and so I had a super tight loop that's calling Java methods in the Pi4J library like 10,000 times a second or something. Updating the LEDs, and the reflection was killing me. Just because I was calling, like I said, like 10,000 times a second to update it. And while it may have only been 3 or 4 milliseconds of overhead per call, you multiply that by 10,000 times, you're like, okay, that's unsustainable. And I ended up having to work around it by using some different APIs where I could send through like 8 bits of data at once as opposed to 1. But whatever. The point is there is a point where you can call underlying Java objects so much the reflection cost adds up. So anyway.
I think we did that on CF Collection in the old days too. There was, using all the underlying Java calls for stuff, and it was giving us some headaches. Anyways, next up, so we have a safer and more dynamic ColdFusion page caching with Mr. eCache. So that was another one from Steve Bryant. And so if you're not using CashBox and you want something lightweight to help you with some caching, this might be a good tool for you. And he can actually, funnily enough, he says he likes the Mr. eCache that way, so he names his files. And if you're on Linux, well, sorry, you just have to suffer with the case sensitivity issues because he likes it that way.
Plot twist: what if it's supposed to be pronounced mystery cache? Like, it's a
mystery cache. That's kind of cool. I didn't think about it that way. But yeah, so he just talked about looking at different data and using keys and like parts of your URL as part of your cache names and stuff. So if you have a regex on the cache, you can pass in the ID equals 8, for example. So your products, even on the same ColdFusion page, that they wouldn't, basically be using the same key name. It's just how ColdBox, like CacheBox or ColdBox handler caching, we use the RC scope, so your URL variables help generate a unique key for it, etc. So, but yeah, it helps you do targeted caching, and it gives some examples. So, again, if you're just wanting a little bit of caching in your site, maybe this is a good option if you're not wanting to jump into something like CacheBox. But yeah, nice little helper method. So it's like CacheBox Lite almost. So he's got a good little series building up here on caching. So if you come check it out here, he has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, quite a few. He's really got a good little stack there. So Steve Bryant, thank you for sharing that. And our last blog post, we'll cut you off early for this one, Brad, but we've already talked about CommandBox release candidate, so we can jump through that one. But
test it, suckers. Do it.
Test it. Okay. So next up we have Find a Job, and so getcfmljobs.com actually has 0 new jobs this week. We have 0 because last week we had 8. So
I guess they've all been filled.
no, it's just haven't been reposted as new ones. So they're still on the site. You can go check them out. There's 32 positions open right now from 20 companies across 16 locations in 5 countries. So quite a lot of good job opportunities there. And also,
there's 32 postings right now on the site.
Yep. And so if you're looking for a job, definitely go check that out. Order Solutions is still hiring. I know you've been interviewing, Brad. Are we still looking? Are we still accepting new applications?
I don't know where
It's
we're
still
at
on the
at
site.
Ortus
So
in that. I don't think we've actually made any final determinations. So I'm sure if you're still interested and you want to shoot a resume over, you can still do that.
Yep. So if you go to ordersolutions.com/about-us/careers, we have information there. And the big thing is we require U.S. time zone availability, and you must be a U.S. citizen or resident or have a work visa to work in the U.S. So other than that, we got a lot of good opportunities. Get to work with a lot of great, smart people. So it'd be good fun and a good job opportunity. So definitely check that out. And then we have another job which we're getting more details on, so they're coming soon. But Brian, I always never know if I'm saying his right.
I've never said his name out loud. I've only read it in my head.
Giornelli. He's basically with the Motorsports registration website. He spoke at a lot of conferences, but yeah, I'm always say his name wrong. It's like Ghirardelli's chocolate is what I always think of when I see his name. I'm like, nope.
I think it's Brian Gidanelli.
Gidanelli. So
I just know he always had the cool racing website. I mean, I always go read his blogs, and he had the sweet like race car. Orange is my favorite color.
Yep, and he races cars, and his ColdFusion website. It's a SaaS service for motorsport registration for races and everything. So I always see his stuff on Twitter where he's racing all these awesome cars. Anyway, they're looking for a full-time remote developer, looking at contract or full-time. So we're getting more details soon, but I want to mention that they're looking, and as soon as we have details, we will share that. But if you know Brian or know him on Twitter, reach out to him, and I will share more as soon as we have more. But so thanks for Brian for reaching out about that job opportunity. Okay, next up, let's talk about ForgeBox module of the week. And this week is CommandBox Git Protect.
I didn't even recognize this one. Is this new?
Yeah, I always look for the new one. So this one is a new one.
Came out last week. I haven't looked at the site for new modules in a couple days or.
Yep. So CommandBox Git Protect. So apparently, when you're doing CommandBox 5.1, when you do a box install, it'll overwrite any package where the current version does not match the installed version, which is the way it's supposed to work, right? The only issue is if you actually clone from a Git repo, a lot of times there's a placeholder for the version number instead of the actual version number. And so if you actually do a box install, it'll wipe that out. And so this module basically just checks to see if the existing package is a Git repo. If it is, it won't let you overwrite it when you do a box install.
Yeah, I remember this now because Seb had talked to me about this, and I added a feature in CommandBox 5.2 to allow him to be able to do this. Because he had reached out to me a while back, and he wanted me to change the default behavior, and I had said, no, I like the default behavior, and you're doing it wrong. Because what they're doing is preside extensions, or plugins, whatever they call them, they were working on, they would check them out right there inside of their working directory. And it would look like an installed dependency, but it would actually be a Git checkout. And they didn't have their version numbers, they had placeholders. Anyway, I told him he should change his workflow. And use symlinks or change the numbers. But I said that's fine. If you don't want to change your workflow, how about I modify the uninstall interceptor so you can pass back a flag and you can say, no, skip this installation. And so it's all come back to me now. That's exactly what he did. Is his module listens to that on install interception point, and then it goes and runs its own custom logic and says, whoa, hold up, skip this one. Don't install this guy, just move on. And then, the CommandBox core looks for that flag that comes back and intercept data and just passes over it and goes to the next one.
Yeah, so I thought that was pretty cool. And yeah, sometimes when you are working with a repo, it may be useful A lot of times you can just put that in the modules app folder as
Yeah.
well. That's what I do. A lot of the time I'll put it in the modules app folder instead of the modules folder. Therefore, CommandBox doesn't install. But then if you have it in your box.json, it's going to install a module there, and then you'll have two, and then you'll have issues. You know, pros and cons. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's kind of
But I
a
mean, the win for me on this is, being able to use interceptors to modify core behaviors. So I still have it the way I want it. Now he gets it the way he wants it. Everybody wins.
yeah, and obviously he put that out in ForgeBox so people can use it as well. It's not just him, but he could have just written for himself if he wanted to. But we appreciate it when you do that. So before we jump into the next one, which is our VS Code hints and tips and tricks, we wanted to mention that Zach Spitzer's in the live chat, and he said his little memory tool was real time with no overhead. So that's really cool. So the memory analyzer showing it, how the server memory and everything's broken down is all real time. So I'm definitely gonna have to check that out. That's gonna be useful trying to figure out why my stuff is.
Yeah, I think I saw what it calls
misbehaving.
size of, which is a Java method that'll guesstimate how big an object is. So it's pretty cool.
Very cool. Okay, so next up, we have our VS Code hints, tips, and tricks of the week, and I cannot believe that we have not done this one yet.
What?
So our VS Code ColdBox extension, which we've had out for a long time, and we've been doing 75 hints, tips, and tricks of the week, and we hadn't talked about our ColdBox extension. So it's a ColdBox platform bundle for VS Code. It supports platform 5 and 6 of ColdBox. And the cool thing is it's not just ColdBox MVC, but if you're using Wirebox or CacheBox or Logbox, there's features in here that you can use. So we have Code Insight. So most of the ColdBox and TestBox functions. So Code Insight for that. We have Code Skeleton Snippets.
Lots
We
of
have
snippets.
Code Handler.
Even
handler
has
code
like
snippets.
ORM code snippets, which is
Yep.
pretty cool.
ORM code snippets and Wirebox snippets. So all these little features in there if you're working with ColdBox, Wirebox, CacheBox, or Logbox. This will definitely be a really good little extension for you. So yeah, I like all these tab completes. The funny thing is every once in a while I'll name a variable something that's probably shouldn't be named that, and I'll hit tab and I'll get something interesting pop up. I'm like, what the heck was that? Where'd that come from? I'm like, oh, yep, probably, I have a TestBox one where it's based on some of the TestBox BDD names, and I've written some stuff and hit tab, and I'm like, that's not what I wanted. So, but yeah, so that's a really good platform extension. So definitely check that out, because we've already mentioned the VS Code CommandBox one, we've already mentioned the VS Code TestBox one previously, but yeah, we never focused on ColdBox extension. So now we have. Okay, so next up, we have our Patreon supporters. So we have a lot of Patreon supporters now. We actually had 3 or 4 new ones last week, and so I know that a few people are actually supporting us on CFCasts instead of Patreon. So I would, list both of them, but there's too many people on CFCast to name, so I can't do that. But let's go through them. I'll have Brad read out our Patreon supporters to thank them for supporting us with their own hard-earned money. So.
All right. Thank you to Ben Nadell, Brett DeLine, Carl von Stetten, Charlie Earhart, Dali, Dan Carr, Daniel Garcia, David Bellinger, Didier Lesnicki, Don Bellamy, Edward Cabezas, Eric Hoffman, Gary Knight, Giancarlo Gomez, Jan Yannick, Jason Diger, Jeff McLean, Jeremy Adams, Jonas Erickson, Jordan Clark, Joseph Lamry, Kai Koenig, Latsma Tiritodati, Mario Rodriguez, Matthew Darby, Matthew Clemente, Mingo Hagen, Ross Phillips, Ryan Hughes, Scott Steinbeck, Sean Oden, Stephen Klotz, Synaptrix, and Yogesh Mathur. Wow. Thank you so much, guys.
Yep, really appreciate it. And your money goes towards this podcast first and foremost, but obviously supporting us helps support CommandBox, ForgeBox, ColdBox, ContentBox, TestBox, and all the other boxes. So, okay. Well, also somebody asked for the blog link. Which blog link? I know we got
What you
lots
talking
of them
about,
here.
Willis?
Oh,
the
racing
Brian.
Okay. Yep, we'll send that out here.
You got it?
Yep, get in there. So I'll send that out. And then, yeah, definitely appreciate everyone tuning in, listening. Thanks, everybody, for coming and watching. And we'll see you all next week.
Bye-bye, guys.
Bye. Show notes for this episode can be found at cfmlnews.modernizeordie.io, where you can also subscribe to your favorite podcast player like Spotify or iTunes. We also have the link to YouTube to find more videos just like this. The music used in this podcast is under a royalty-free license from Sound.com and Blue Tree Audio.